Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone out there, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Buddhist Biohacker, and it is yet another episode of the Buddhist Biohacker. We're already in the 60s of the amount of episodes we've done this year, which is so crazy to think, halfway in. And welcome in, and welcome to everybody in the live. Please do not forget you can share your comments and questions in the live feed. I'd love to hear where you're from. I'd love to hear how you're feeling. It's been an intense week and some weird, wild stuff going on, which is kind of normal now, I think. And I'm really excited about today's show because we are going to talk about the US Natal Chart, which I have been planning this show for quite some time. And I am very honored and excited to have both Kate Wind and Julian, the London Astrologer, with us today because you guys are both so talented in what you do. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, this is great. Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be so good. And hi, Carrie. Hi, Karen. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome to the members of the channel. We have our fun little emojis, which we can't see in StreamYard, but they're really cute. So you have to look in YouTube chat to see it. So let's dive in because there's a lot to talk about. And why I wanted to do this show is because I kept hearing from all of you guys that are astrologers, like, that we're heading into this Pluto return and there's all this crazy stuff going on with the US Natal Chart. And then just some context for both you, Kate, and Julian, and also everybody out there. Last year, Thomas Jefferson showed up when I was doing a mediumship event, and he's become like my buddy. As a medium, I don't really know what to say about this, except that Thomas Jefferson's always around. And in fact, even I was drinking an honest tea, like the teas, and I unscrewed the cap, and this is like a month ago, and the quote was from Thomas Jefferson. I mean, it's like he's like in my space. And then I also, right after he showed up, and I can feel him even now while I'm talking about this, right after he showed up, I had a lucid dream in which George Washington came as well. And he was with this Masonic group of people with these robes. It was very weird. And he gave me all this information about some of the symbolism and Masonry. So it's very weird. I have this very weird connection to the Founding Fathers for some reason. And I'm still exploring what that's about personally. But anyway, this is why I want to do the show, because clearly there's stuff we need to talk about. So whichever one of you guys wants to dive in, like let's get started for sure.
Kate, you go first.
Okay, perfect. Well, like Lisa said, there is so much to talk about with the chart of the United States. So we could start with something like, I've been talking about Saturn and Aquarius. The last year and a half, we've been talking about the squares between Uranus and Saturn. We've been talking about Jupiter and Pisces and what's going to happen when it moves back into Aquarius. But the Pluto return, I know, is what everyone is kind of like, they're kind of a little scared about, right? So the exact date is in February of 2022. And to give you some background on Pluto returns, most of us are familiar with Saturn return, right? Around the age of 28, 29. And then again, in our late 50s, early 60s, we experience Saturn return. It happens every 29 and a half years. Well, Pluto returns only happen every about 200 and almost 50 years. So us as humans don't experience them. So that's why it seems like such a big deal, because we don't have a whole lot of experience with them. When we go and study other countries that have maybe gone through this before, there's not a lot of examples to say, how are we going to go through this? But I think one of the simplest statements I'm going to say about this, and it might be oversimplified, but the energy that we were founded under as the US is being reactivated again as we go into our Pluto return. Now, because Pluto takes so long to get around the circle, this is not something where I'm just worried about February. Like, right, it's so close right now that we're already feeling it. This is all preparing us for the change that we will go through as we go through this whole process. So I don't want anyone to be scared, like, what is going to happen in February, right? We're already feeling it. So I have a lot of examples of how we've already been feeling it. But Julian, if you want to maybe do like an intro as well on what you're thinking.
Sure. Thank you. So I just want to add a little bit to that. The idea how long Pluto takes, it's 240, 250 years, So it's actually when it enters a sign that the sort of the initial things can start to happen. And Pluto went into Capricorn in 2008, and that was really interesting because suddenly there was an economic crash which really shook the world. But at the same time, Obama became the president, and that was a real surprise for a lot of people. And that was a direct message, really, of what is meant to be happening here. You know, the things that Pluto brings up, because Pluto is the shadow side of things. You know, it's the dark, the hidden underworld, the you know, and there's a lot of issues to do with power and control, dominance, and various things like this. And you know, Obama became president. You know, so here was this guy who had a Muslim-sounding name, who was black, suddenly became president of the United States, and this was a first for everything in America's history. And he then did as Pluto was going through Capricorn, he served eight years as the president, and then, you know, Pluto's getting closer and closer to its Pluto return, which, as you said, is February next year. But when you see it in a larger cycle and take that whole sign, the movement of the sign, the Pluto going into its own sign, where it was when America 1776, then you're looking at this sense of after Obama, then we had to have the worst side of Pluto to manifest in order to see where collectively we, you know, have gone wrong. Or so Donald Trump suddenly became the president, and he was an autocrat. You know, he is someone who was like, right then, you know, I'm going to be kind of like a bully boy government. You know, like I think his whole attitude was really extreme. You know, and all about the power and the control and changing everything. And a lot of people got really, but he was unique as well because he came from business. He didn't come from politics as such. He came from business and went into politics. And in a way, that is, I think, the sense that we had to experience that, because business has been a hugely predominant factor in the development of America. You know, like corporate things, and so this guy came in who was this particular type of person, and he rattled a lot of people's you know, people were, but also people really supported him as well. You know, he had a massive following, and because he was unique and he was different and he was original, so it wasn't the statesman anymore as much as the guy who can be like a big boss man, you know, and act in that way. So but what I'm looking at here as well is this idea of Pluto as his 250 years of time. What was happening in 1776? Well, you know, America broke away from England, from the United Kingdom, or from, you know, and that they had their Brexit, as it were, in 1776, and they just said, right, well, we're done with the English thing. You know, we're going to have our own thing. So that was the War of Independence and all these sort of things. But England had actually started something that became that was about the British Empire. It was about taking control, and it was the idea of slavery, the legacy of slavery, which is incredibly powerful. Bigotry, greed, racism, these things were inherent in the idea of taking people as slaves. And England started it, but once they got it going, America then ran with it because they could build a whole country on it. You know, so it then became a big thing. People often, I think, forget that it was the UK that started that. You know, as a trend, they were the first people, I think, to ban it as well, and then America banned it a bit later on. But the point is that generation after generation after generation, there is this dark underbelly of that power and control. And in America, the world has yet they've got to deal with these issues, because it's kind of been brushed under the carpet quite a lot. So the George Floyd thing was a massive turning point, where Black Lives Matter and things like this. Suddenly it became something that is a very has the qualities of a Pluto return. And now we've got Joe Biden back in as a president, who is the statesman character again, carrying on the Obama legacy, and he's brought in his new vice president is also black, or half, and she might take over. You see, so it's bringing it back again. There's all these issues that are coming up that need to be resolved, and in a very simple way, just to say that it's the fear of the other, is often what gets people riling, gets people feeling the hate and the anger and all this sort of stuff. It's fear of, them and me, or those, and and so it's minority groups are often get a lot of problems with that. So there's all these issues that are all in the news all the time, and have particularly had since 2008, have been building up like that,
I think it was interesting that you brought up 2008, because that was the last Saturn-Uranus square that we had. And so I was attributing some of those as well to the square, having the first black president. We saw swine flu. We saw the Great Recession, the high unemployment. Here we are again. And so, it's the perfect combination of both the Pluto return and Uranus Saturn. So in some regards, we've felt it, right? Like we've had Pluto oppose Pluto. We've had Pluto square Pluto. We've been through changes before. So I love those correlations that you're pulling in. And then here we are, we have COVID, we have a new, we have our first female vice president. Like we're seeing these big steps again, especially with people of color and people of like minority, like women. And when we see Pluto return, I think people of color, the minorities, they have to rise, because we have to address how we were founded, and it uncovers the roots of things that maybe we were improperly built on. So we could give even the example of all the indigenous babies being found. I know it's happening in Canada right now, but they're coming to the United States next. That is like a literal example of Pluto getting beneath the surface. They are digging and finding these children. It starts shattering some of the things that we were built on, some of the ideas that we were built on. And I think that it's going to be those things that come to light that start rewriting our history. Pluto is the roots.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to throw in, just some things I've learned about Thomas Jefferson, and just some of the information I have that matches all of this too, that's very esoteric, which is, first off, Thomas Jefferson had this lifelong relationship with one of his slaves, and he has a whole entire family generational tree that's mixed race from that relationship. So he was also fighting for independence, and at the same time he was a slave owner, right? So there's something about Thomas Jefferson where he represents both sides of the spectrum somehow. And I'm also very curious, because am I right in that the Pluto return date is February 22nd? Is that correct? It's 2/22/22, which is George Washington's birthday. And by the way, my stepdaughter's birthday, and there's 3 2/22 birthdays in our community that I know of. So the thing that Thomas Jefferson, some of you guys are asking, like, what did the founding fathers say? I could have a whole show just about that. But what I do want to say is Thomas Jefferson was very clear with me that as Masons, and as we get into talk about the secret stuff, right? All the secret societal elite pieces to building this government, is they chose these astrological dates to found the country, to sign documents like the Declaration of Independence. I mean, these dates were chosen, and it's almost like they knew that this stuff was going to go on at this time. And so I'm just curious, like, it's pretty wild to me that 2/22 happens to be when this starts, even though I know you guys are saying we're feeling it before, but there's a lot of interesting synchronicity that we may never know all of the details of, but it just fascinates me. And it fascinates me that Thomas Jefferson was like this representation of white elite slave owner power. And at the same time, he had this relationship and love for them and made sure they were taken care of when he passed away. I mean, he really did. So it's like this weird dichotomy between the two.
Mm-hmm. Yes, interesting. So shall I mention a little bit, just a couple of pointers towards the American chart, how it was birthed. July the 4th, 1776 was what we call in astrology an electional date. You know, it was elected accordingly. And because the sun in the sign of the crab, in Cancer, the crab, plus other planets. I don't know if I can share my screen here and show you the chart.
You can. I think you can share underneath. Yeah.
So if I do, let's have a look then. Let's just see if I can do that. Hang on a sec. Right. It says share, so I'll try share screen. Here we go. And then I'll try and bring up my. Wait a minute. Oh. Sorry, I'll be. Might take a second. Hang on. Okay, hang on. Let's just see. Is that done it?
It's not showing up yet.
No.
You can always send it over to me too on email, and I'll pull it up while you're talking.
Oh, okay. Okay then. So the chart of America is, and I would like to just show you a bit of it. Is let me.
Can you email it over to me, and I'll pull it up?
Yes, yes, of course. Yeah. Okay then. Oh, yeah.
Do that, and I'll
all right. Okay. So. Oh God! Hang on.
Bear with us, everyone.
There we go. Okay. I'll have it to you in just 1 second. It's here. There it is. Right.
And Kate, you can do this.
Okay, Lisa, I've literally just sent you an email then with the chart. Okay. So you should be able to see that now, hopefully, if it's arrived.
Okay.
So this chart is 5:10 in the evening on the 4th of July, 1776. I'm not absolutely completely au fait with the timing of that chart. As in, what I'm trying to say is there's a story behind that. There was like a very fast horse and carriage race, I believe, to Philadelphia to get the Declaration of Independence signed by all the different people. But this sun is on the star Sirius, which is the brightest star in the sky. And Sirius has it's known as the heliacal rising star in ancient Egypt. That is to say, whenever the star Sirius was seen rising, then that would be the annual flooding of the River Nile, the Egyptian river, the Nile. And of course, in America, the Mississippi is the major river, and they have in deference or kind of a link, the city of Memphis. In Tennessee, Memphis is actually the name of an Egyptian city on the Nile in Egypt. So it's quite interesting that their major river, the most central river, has an Egyptian city named after it as well, which might be an interesting something to look at, in the future with respect to that. Understanding that there's a lot of ancient Egyptian things in America, as it were. So when they call the flag the Stars and Stripes, all those stars, each one, of course, represents a state. But there's a kind of a nod and a wink to the idea of stars. The idea of the astrology being very chosen. And can you see the chart now, Lisa? Have you got the chart?
Yeah,
did it come through?
We've got it up here. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So if you have a look here, you can see, if you go to like the houses 7 and 8 in the chart, or the sectors 7 and 8, if you like. You know, if you don't know charts very well, I think, but 7 and 8, you can see there's a whole clustering of planets there, and all these planets rose before the sun. Okay, so before sunrise on the day of July the 4th, Mars rose first in the sky before anything else, and then Venus, and then Jupiter. And Venus and Jupiter are the great benefics. These are very lucky lucky planets. Together, to have them together is a lot of luck. And I think this it sort of embodies America as a place that people can really forge their own luck if they want to. But this Mars in Gemini, I think, is incredibly interesting because this is called in ancient astrology, when the planets rise before the sunrise, so things would be appearing in the east before the sunrise. They're called the flag bearers, and or the flag wavers. You know, the flag bearers, and Mars is the first planet rising, or in traditional astrology. And America does have quite a powerful military, of course, you know, Mars being the military, and quite a lot of things to do with things like guns and handguns and open carry and all this, you know, all these different things, because it's embedded deeply into American culture and history, you know, the cowboys and Indians, if you like, you know, or Western films. And so the Mars is very strong there in Gemini, and it's angular. So it's on an angle with the descendant. And interestingly enough, Donald Trump's sun is 20 Gemini, and the Mars in the American chart is 21 Gemini. So Donald Trump really did create quite a heated things up, and you got a lot of the far right kind of extremism starting. You know, people quite willing to start to take a stand. You know, with the idea of guns and things like that. So there was a lot of stuff going on like that when Donald Trump was in power. But this sun here is very interesting. There's a few interesting American characters who also have their sun on the same place as this sun sign, and so Nancy Reagan was born at the same time. You know, Nancy Reagan has her sun on Sirius, as does Sylvester Stallone. So the Rocky films and Rambo films, and Nancy Reagan, of course, you know, Reaganomics, all very much part of the Reagan years, and also Ringo Starr, the drummer of the Beatles, who lives in Los Angeles, and once he left England. You know, he lives in America, and of course his name is Ringo Starr. Another sort of interesting little hint that he might know a lot more than he lets on, you know. But the thing is that there's a, you know, quite a sort of interesting collection of, you know, if you look into people who have their birth dates around the sun here, in the crab, which is where Sirius is, and Sirius is the bright star. You know, it's the brightest, most colorful star, and you can see it quite easily because it's very easy to spot. It changes colors a lot. And there's a lot more things I could say about this, but I won't go into too much detail. I think what's really interesting at the moment, of course, is here's the Pluto. The Pluto return is about to happen. It's been going over this point. We're going to get it exact in February. It's in the second house, which is to do with wherewithal. You know, it's to do with money and resources. I think we're going to have another sort of economic thing. Possibly some sort of crash again, but. It's interesting because you see Pluto does things for different people. Everyone has a different Pluto doing different things. Some people can become very wealthy. Others can lose everything, you know, and so it'll be interesting to see how that works. Because there's a lot of things to do with a lot of these issues that are always coming up. And I've actually made some notes here. So there's if we look at the Pluto half return in the mid-1930s, so that was when Pluto was around about here at 27 of the crab. This was the 1930s. This was the Great Depression. Yeah, absolutely. And things like the Dust Bowl and stuff. And that was to do with the economy, to do with things like that. It was very important at that time. there's just an ongoing. There's so much to see here that, and all the themes are in the news all the time, and they have been now for about 10 years. Things like explosive scandals, the idea of falling from grace, hidden corruption, sex crimes, and treasonous activity. Donald Trump was several times people were trying to accuse him of treason, and then there's all these different things, and ultimately it was this. He embodied the Pluto and Capricorn element, I think, but he wasn't necessarily he only meant to do those few years just to show that he the things that needed to be changed. He brought the issues up to the light. He unburied the difficult buried stuff, and now it's all very obvious what has to be done, in order to create the healing and to create the transformation. Yeah. So I live in hope, that all these things are good. Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris is I think going to be something amazing. She's going to take over the Obama seat, and I'm pretty certain she is anyway, And
the strongest chart out of all of them.
Yeah,
she does, doesn't she? Yeah.
She did. When I was thinking, something looks like it might happen.
Yeah, and I've seen it. I got a great story about that, but pause for a minute before I take this off the screen. Kate, is there anything you want to say about the chart while it's up before I take it off, and then we can dive in? We can talk a little bit more about Kamala and Trump and Biden. Yeah.
I think just one thing I was going to throw in about all that Cancer energy that we have. I just think it's interesting that, we think of the Cancer, we think of the crab, they have that hard outer shell and then that soft, right, kind of gooey innards, if you will. And when you look at kind of what the United States is known for, we are a gun country. We think of like the bullets, we have the hard shell, the soft inside. I think it's kind of going away, but the baseball thing, we have the hard outer shell. On the 4th of July, we celebrate with not pumpkin pies, like peach pies or cherry pies, right? The hard outer, the soft inner. I just think it's interesting, when people say like, will we always be gun carrying? When you look at the chart, probably with all of that Cancer. And then just with you pointing out about Pluto being in the 2nd house, we attribute that usually to money, to our resources. And it's just interesting, all the shortages that we're seeing here in the United States, the car shortages. We have cars sitting on lots without the chips in them to get them started. Starbucks has reported that they have ingredients that they can no longer get. So, it could be interesting to see how our resources are hindered as we get closer even to this Pluto return. That's all.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, that's interesting. And I can say too, like from the psychic perspective, things that I've been told by the Sacred Council, which for everybody out there, that's the group of beings that I channel. The Sacred Council has been talking about really since April of last year about these shortages and talking about it being very sporadic. They always show an image of a grocery store aisle with bits and pieces missing out of it. So it's like you're never going to go completely without food, but the word that the Sacred Council keeps using is adaptability. It's really important that we have adaptability over the next few years and really over the roaring 20s are back, basically. And so during this decade, it's like really looking at the shortages. I know one of my clients and friends, her husband's a painter and he can't even get paint to paint houses. I mean, there's just all these weird sporadic things. So it's really looking at how can we be flexible and adapt with what we need. And then the financial piece that you're bringing up too, I've gotten a lot of information about the transition of our currency and where our currency is going. And what's interesting to me is the Sacred Council kept talking about rainbow money and they kept showing me rainbow money. And I really was thinking, oh, well, we're going to change the way our money looks, and how our money is presented, which may still be true, right? But I did do some research and I found out that rainbow money is actually gold-backed dollars is actually, they call that rainbow money. So it's very interesting to see, like, there's a lot of discussion about, you know, central banks versus gold-backed dollars versus cryptocurrency. And so there's a lot of energy with all of this. I'm interested to see, because you're bringing it up in the chart as well, as, you know, where that's going to go.
We also have Uranus and Taurus. We've had that since 2018. We've seen all these apps like Venmo, Cash App. You can download your checks now via your phone. So we've already seen like some big changes. We've Taurus is our resources. Uranus is erratic. It's unexpected. It's untraditional. So we've already seen that. We still have a few more years left of that as well. So that on top of the Pluto return, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are seeing it our resources.
Yeah, and then going into Kamala, and there's a couple channeled things to share. So first off, last June, I had this wild encounter with a goat, which is like a whole other story, you guys. But basically, this goat appeared. It was very strange. My husband and I had this, but I got this download. And one of the things that they said, and this is like the beginning of June, it might have even been May of last year. The council said to me, there is a woman with dark hair that's going to be important in the chess game of American politics, and she'll make herself known in the next few months. And then sure enough, they announced Kamala in the fall. So I knew that that was really important. And every election, I look at the presidency and who's going to win. That's kind of the journey of being a psychic for a living. And I can tell you that I continue, even now, if I look at that, I see the Queen of Pentacles, and that's what comes up in my tarot deck is the Queen of Pentacles, which is not Joe Biden. That is absolutely a dark-haired woman. And so I am anticipating and seeing and feeling a change, like you're both talking about here, and you're talking about Kate with Kamala's charts. I'm interested to talk about that with you guys too, because I do feel that change as well. I feel like something is happening here that is going to shift that energy, because her energy, I feel like, you know, is really part of the leadership and where we're headed with that as well. And then just another side note, it was like Edgar Cayce channeled years ago that the United States would split, and it was often analyzed as a split, like with an earthquake or something like that. But it's my opinion and some of the channeled information I've received personally that we're going to see a split in the United States. And that concerns me. I'm not saying that to freak anybody out, but I do think there is something happening here. It's pretty obvious how polarized we are in the United States right now, that there is this energy of like splitting and dividing like what we feel and what we believe. And it's very split. Like even in the election, you could see whatever is really true with the election or not, but like you can see there's a split between what half of the American people feel and the other half feel. So there's a lot of like psychic stuff, but I just want to throw it out there because it's all very fascinating to me, because it seems to be lining up astrologically as well.
Yeah. It's been a minute since I've looked at Kamala's chart, so I don't remember off the top of my head what it was at the time when I was making some predictions about what was going on. But her chart does get extremely strong, I know, in everything leading up to 2024. But I think one of the things that worried me about the health of Biden, maybe besides the obvious, would be that great conjunction that we had in December 21st, we saw the conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius. When you look at the Sabian symbols of 0 degree Aquarius Leo, I always look at both sides. That's when we see a man is under emotional distress and blood rushes to his head. So, you know, it just didn't seem like a great energy opening up that election to have concern about a man's health in the country. And again, her chart had lots of other things to say. I don't have that readily available.
Yeah.
I think she'll make a great leader, and it's long overdue, you know, to have a female president in the United States. It will be quite astounding, actually. And I think she's naturally suited to, if you look at Joe Biden's chart, he's about to get a series of eclipses in Scorpio, you know, which is his 12th house. And even though he's got several planets in Scorpio, you know, the nodes are going to go into Scorpio. The South node's going to go into Scorpio soon. And that will be across his, you know, through his 12th house. So he's going to get a series of South node eclipses. across his Scorpio planets. And with the rumors of his health the way that it is, then one might expect that he was, you know, in the right proper way, step down in order to let someone else take over. So, you know, we'll see, won't we? You know, what happens. I think his legacy will now be to try and do something with Ireland. I do believe that's what I think he needs to do, because he has that Irish ancestry. And if he can bring the reunification of Ireland, which I think is a possibility. Here I am talking to you from the other side of the Atlantic, you know. So I just have these kind of, you know, that's what I think is going on, you know. It's going to be a really interesting few years. One thought I have is that there's 4 planets in the crab. You know, we got America's chart, 4 planets in Cancer, and it's homesteading. You know, homestead. You know, is and that opposes the Pluto. And I think you say that America might break up a bit. You know, into, you know, a split in the nation type of stuff. And I think it could be, to a certain extent, it's going back to the land, you know, as well. You know, is realizing that people could go back to the land, you know, but this time using more science and technology, you know, to develop. So it's not so much the backbreaking hard work of farming, as it were, but maybe, you know, in the future, maybe robots will do the farming for us. You know, and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised, you know, but I think people buying their little patch of land and doing their own thing, I think that could be a very big thing in America soon. And I think that's kind of already starting to a certain extent. And I think that could be quite an indicator of things. In terms of Uranus in Gemini in the American chart, which is in the sort of 6th, 7th house of the chart, is when they had the first Uranus return, that was the American Civil War. So 1776 was the birth of independence, but then 84 years later, I think it was, yeah. So that 1860, I think, was the Civil War, and that was when Uranus was in Gemini, and that, of course, was basically dividing the country into 2. I don't know. I can't see America having another civil war. I don't think it's going to happen. I doubt it, because I think there's going to be a new peace directive. I think there's going to be something really special coming through. And yeah, sorry, Kate, you were going to say.
Well, I was going to say, I think you make a great point with that, because I think if we looked back on like the other Pluto aspects that we've had, if we look at other countries that have been through our Pluto return, we would scare the crap out of everyone. But we have to like realize like we've come a long ways with technology. We've come a long ways with social media and being able to talk and being able to come together. You know, we didn't have those things back in these years that we would be referencing. So I do think like the idea of you saying like, oh, like robots or something, or that we could come together in a new way versus all the separation that we've seen in the past is very possible, because now with these outlets that we have, it'd be really hard to break it up, right? Unless something's going to happen like the internet crashes or something.
Well, now you're talking, you see, because that is how to have an overnight revolution, right? You know, right? Because everyone is so reliant on the internet now. Like, absolutely everything is going through the internet, and if it was to have a, you know, like a stalling or a delaying or to shut down, what, you know, I mean, it's going to be like, that would be massive chaos, you know. Yeah. And as maybe the February the 22nd, 2022, you know, could be something like that, right? And but here's the thing, you see, because Pluto is often the hidden enemy, right? It's like, who did that? who crashed our internet? Who crashed the world internet? Is it the Russians? Oh, was it the Chinese? Oh my God! Yeah. Was it some spotty teenage kid in his bedroom, you know, crashing the world internet or something? You know, like, what happened? You know, and it could be something like that. You know what I mean? It could be like, oh my God, you know, and in a way, that actually brings me to talk quickly about 9/11, right? Because the American chart has the ascendant in Sagittarius at 12 degrees Sag and the descendant at 12 degrees Gemini. And there was the Saturn-Pluto opposition that went off across that axis when 9/11 happened.
That was also another Uranus-Saturn square year.
Yikes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
Oh, go ahead, Julian.
so what that created was where is the enemy, right? Where are they, right? Because it was an anonymous thing. You know, it's like, okay, these planes just flew into our landmark towers here. You know, what the heck? You know, how can we respond to that? You know, right. and it was an immediate kind of like, well, we've got to do something about this. We've got to protect ourselves. You know, 4 planets in Cancer, right? We've got to protect ourselves. We've got to secure it. We've got to, you know, homeland security, right? All that sprung up as a result of you know, that's 4 planets in Cancer, homeland security. I mean, it just speaks it, you know.
Yeah, I think there was also an eclipse in Cancer around that time, and there was also an eclipse in Cancer right before the George Floyd thing. I thought the connection was interesting that both accounts, U.S. citizens were sitting in their houses watching the TV, watching something horrific happen on camera, like in the comfort of like the homes, right, for the people that weren't directly affected. And activating the US chart as well with all that Cancer.
And that's really interesting that you say that, in the comfort of home, because that is 4 planets in Cancer as well. You know, is like here is something, and that's the Mars in Gemini. It's a little, and the Uranus Mars, quite wide conjunction there on the descendant of the chart, is the television, right? Because Gemini is like a channel of communication. Uranus is TV aerials, you know. As Mars, something horrific, right, or something, you know, and 9/11 was on the TV. George Floyd was on the TV. These things are on TV, and they're presented in the comfort of the home, which is the 4 planets in Cancer. So again, you know, these and you know, so there's things like that kind of going on all the time, you know. And really interesting that you talked about how the eclipses were going on with George Floyd, because we just had those eclipses in Cancer as well, you know, which was Donald Trump as well, of course. Right. You know, he you know, all the eclipses with him for the 4 years were very much to do with.
So right before the Pluto return happens, I'll talk about one other aspect. We have Jupiter in Pisces right now. So that's been there since I think May 15th or something. May 15th, Jupiter moved into Pisces. And so at least here in the US, we have kind of rose-colored glasses on, everything opened back up, masks are off. It seems like we are in the clear. And so just giving a word of caution as we see Jupiter move back into Aquarius at the end of this month. July 29th, I would think that it should be back in the news. People might be voluntarily wearing masks again. People might be putting mask things in place. They could be talking more about some sort of variant of COVID. And then Jupiter will move to the 29 degree, the anaretic degree of Aquarius. At the same time, we have the last Uranus-Saturn square this year. So December 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th should be also another little window date to look at. When we look at something like Mars retrograded this last year, when we saw it at the 29 degree, that's when we saw the attacks on the Capitol. So here we are again, 29 degrees paired with the Uranus-Saturn energy. So one last hit of that this year.
Yes.
Well, and I'd like to share a quote from Thomas Jefferson because I think it's really fascinating. And this is one of his famous quotes, but it was in a letter he had written to a colleague. And he said, "What country before ever existed a century and a half without a rebellion? And what country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. The remedy is to set them right as to facts, pardon and pacify them. What signify a few lives lost in a century or two The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It is its natural manure. And I want to share, because there's a lot of profound energy to that statement, but it also, the century and a half, the century or two, sort of prophetic, or very prophetic. And when you step back and get that 50,000 foot view, and really even looking at the Pluto return and Trump and Biden and all the stuff that's going on, you know, it feels to me, and the energy reads to me like this is really asking us as Americans and asking this country to kind of reset to the energy that it was founded in. And some of that energy was really violent and volatile. And some of it was that I have a Cancer rising, so that homestead energy speaks to me so much, because it's about beautifying and you know, building a home and building a space, and we want to be safe, but we also want to be reminded of our freedom. And so I think even Trump's class action announcement that he made, you know, whatever the agenda is there, it's a reminder to us that this country was founded in freedom of speech and independence, you know, and sovereignty, and being able to stand in that. And I just think, again, there's so much prophetic wisdom in the esoteric writings of our founding fathers. And I promise you guys we'll do a show on that, because that's fascinating to me. But I just think that quote is very interesting, because I feel like that's what's happening. It's like asking everyone to take arms. And it does make me nervous with the Pluto return and the energy of it all, because I think there is this revolution energy that's like pressing up against each other right now, and probably will, it sounds like, for a while.
Yeah, well, and then we have Pluto moving into Aquarius afterwards, which that's a whole other thing. But
I was just about to say that as well.
Yeah.
and of course, you know, may I just,
Please.
The first three words of the Declaration of Independence is "we, the people," and that is Pluto going into Aquarius, right? Because that actually encapsulates, because when they wrote that, I believe Pluto had moved into Aquarius when they actually drafted that constitution, that Pluto had actually moved into Aquarius by then. So they called it "We the People." And the chart, the American chart, has the moon in Aquarius. So I'm holding out loads of hope, because I think there's going to be something really amazing is going to happen, you know. And I actually think that the consciousness of America is going to change in a very positive way, and you know, just an awakening. You know, it's like I suppose you could call it the 100th monkey, isn't it? You know, where suddenly everyone's doing it. You know, like everyone's awake. You know, because you go for so long, a few people are awakened. You know, and then suddenly everyone wakes up. You know. And it's like, say, you know, Woodstock to today, you know, there was maybe 400,000 awakened people at Woodstock, or 500,000 or something. But now there's, you know, 50 million maybe who are woken up, you know, and it's just that sense of like, you know, how it's growing all the time, you know, that the ability to evolve, really. You know, rather than backtrack. I think what's coming up is all the stuff comes up from the buried underneath. That's what Pluto does. It resurfaces stuff, you know, and then people go, oh my God, are we really like that? Is it really like this? Oh wow, yeah, we should do something about this. You know,
it reveals things that we haven't seen.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and I think that's possibly, you know, how the revealing is an ongoing thing. You know, it's an ongoing thing, and by February, most of the main themes will have been fully revealed, leading to then allowing for change, you know, and transformation and a rebirth. So,
yeah.
And yeah. Well, you know.
Well, and you know, I'm seeing some of these comments here, and you know, somebody said here, William is saying, get ready to move to a red state, and I want to talk about this because I'm curious, Kate and Julian, what you've seen in your astrology sessions and in the charts, because I've noticed many of my clients are very transient right now. There's very much this desire to move and change, and yet don't really know where to go. And the messaging that I've been receiving from the council is just kind of hold where you are and let some things unfold before you make that change, and really see where you want to be and what aligns with your own belief system and where you're at, especially in the US. And I'm just wondering if you're seeing anything with movement and change, because it also makes me think of, you know, the Oregon Trail and the big push to go west. It's like there is this real shift of like changing the way that we're living. You know, that's all part of the age of Aquarius, I suppose. But there is this desire to be sustainable. We're having to be adaptable. We're having to change where we're living. And there's this desire for movement. And yet we're in the middle of a volatile time period with our government and our political structures, which are changing. That's part of this journey, is the collapse of the systems, and then, you know, the rebuilding of those systems. And so I'm just curious if you have any thoughts or insight on that too, because I do think, you know, it's less about moving to a red state or a blue state and more about seeing like how are things going to land and end up, and what places in the country even have the resources that you need and want, and how are you going to live having your own resources and being sustainable? I think those are real questions that are up right now for a lot of people.
I mean, from an astrocartography standpoint, I've been doing a lot of those appointments where I take people's charts and I lay it over the world or the United States to help people move. I know there's a lot of people in transition right now. I don't know if it's necessarily a sustainability thing, but I do have a lot of clients saying like, okay, where should I move? What would be the best for me? And then I can say also being in Las Vegas, we're seeing a huge influx into our city from California moving in. So
yeah, everybody's fleeing California. Sorry if you're in California, everybody's fleeing there though, that's for sure. What about you, Julian?
Well, I mean, you know, I'm hoping eventually to come back to America, actually. So, you know, in the long run, my daughter's getting her education here. So that's another 7 years, but she might do college in America, and that would be the, you know, then we could move back. So, you know, we'll see what happens, you know, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, Pluto and Aquarius, you know, it's going to be interesting. And I do believe it's going to be a golden age. You know, it's actually, it's when all, you know, because you see, Leo can be very self-centered. The opposite sign of Aquarius is humanitarian. You know, what do we do for everybody? Leo focuses on its own self quite a lot. And then the other side, though, is to say, well, how do we do it for everybody? You know, and that's often Aquarius's thing, you see. So when Pluto goes into Aquarius, it's like the great equalizer, should we call it? You know, like an equality thing. You know, something's going to, and this is where all the issues around things like racism and things like the attitudes towards minority groups and everything starts to become more evened out, accepted, should we say, and then the healing process begins. So I as I said, I'm absolutely convinced that the Pluto in Aquarius is going to be good, right? I just do, I really do. And then you know, Saturn Neptune in at 0 degrees Aries. That's coming up in like 5 years, you know, or 4 years, something like that, you know. And I can't even imagine what that's going to be at the moment. I can, but I can't. I'm not going to say anything because, you know, but it's interesting, you know, because Aries is ruled by Mars, right? So, and it turns out that the Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries on that day is Mars will be in Aquarius. So that's the chart for the Saturn Neptune conjunction. Mars will be in Aquarius, which I think is, again, really interesting. So, you know,
what does that mean? What does that mean? Like, what's the energy of that for those of us who are like, wait a minute, what does that all mean?
Okay, yeah. So Saturn is structure, Neptune is dissolution. Right? Where Saturn builds, Neptune dissolves. You know, in a Neptune is that kind of untangible, strange, you know, shifts and things where things become foggy or misty or unreal. Saturn is a structure. Saturn is the building, or the form, or the reality, or the concretization, or the crystallization, or the consolidation of things. So if Saturn is things like government, and things like just the order of the world, when it meets Neptune at the very beginning of the zodiac, which is 0 Aries, such a powerful place, then something is going to happen. And as the ruler of when they're meeting is in Aquarius, and Pluto is going to be in Aquarius, and the American moon is the chart is in Aquarius, there's something about changing the world. And Jupiter Saturn met in Aquarius. There's so much that's coming up, that to me says the world is going to have a rebirth, and it's going to be more humanitarian.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. All these energies are just preparing us for the next energy. It's no different than like getting a divorce. Like you don't just wake up one morning and say, I'm going to get a divorce. Like, it's like the first fight and you're like, okay, I can get over that. And then there's not like, it all builds on itself. So it like prepares you for the end result. And I think that's like, I want to get away from people being like so scared of February 2022. Like everything that we've been going through has been preparing us for what's happening. And then that's going to prepare us for Pluto moving into Aquarius. And that's going to prepare us for the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that you're talking about. Like it's all gradual, but it's snowballing of where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And sometimes we have to go through these dark phases. Saturn-Pluto conjunction, a pandemic, all these different things. We had to go through in order to get back to the good times. 2026 is going to be an amazing year, right? Because the Saturn-Neptune meet in Aries, which is a fire sign. Jupiter goes into Leo, which is a fire sign. Uranus goes into Gemini, which is an air sign. Pluto's in Aquarius, which is an air sign. So it's all fire and air, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of elemental balance and what astrology is based on, water and earth is that way, is down, right? It goes that way, right? Fire and air goes that, right? That's what fire and air. So actually, what we're heading towards is this. Right, we're lifting up. We're ascending. But we are lifting up. Right, we're going up and up and up and up and up, rather than down, 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 down. But the Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn and with Jupiter, by the way, so it was Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, and Ceres for the record. It was really like, really a solid down thing. But now we're going to go to the up. It's quite exciting.
If we look at the secondary moon cycle of the US, I like to think of it as like a Ferris wheel. And when you're at the bottom of the Ferris wheel, it's kind of boring, right? It's a new ride. We haven't seen anything. We're laying the foundation. And eventually we get to the top, and that's usually when things are really good. So I walk my clients through this secondary moon process in their chart. In 2024, we are finally, the US is back at the bottom of the Ferris wheel, right? And so it's like from 2024 on, it's like we're back on the upswing, but it's like we've been coming down. We've been coming down. We've been analyzing. We've been having new beginnings. We've been rewriting policies. We've been getting back to our roots. So I do think the upswing is there, but I do think we have a couple more years on.
I've been promised that I'm working really hard for a decade, and then I get to take a break in 2030. That's what I keep being promised by Spirit. And it's interesting because what I see, like the visions that I've had for really my whole life, to be honest, I mean, it's kind of like, I always tell everyone it's really morbid, but the day we went into quarantine in March of last year was like my wedding day, where it's like I'd waited my whole life for this to happen, and it was finally happening. So I know it wasn't great what happened, but I'm just saying, like, that was the moment where I like, okay, this is when I'm supposed to do what I came here to do, which is what we're doing here today. And for me, this whole decade is truly about like, the image that I always see is, remember those little plastic coin bags that had a slit and you had to like open it to like get the coins out? And what I'm seeing is like, it's turning it inside out. It's like, it's time to turn it inside out, dump everything out of it, clean it out, and then we can start to put it back together and put new things inside. Like, this is the collapsing of all of our systems, from healthcare to politics to finances, to education. Systems are collapsing because the new way is about, just like you said, Julian, it's about we the people. The Aquarian age is about that pyramid where the elite are up here and we're all down here is inverting. And it's going to be about all of us working together, and all of us sharing in equal abundance and resources and all of these things. And so I'm hopeful and equally excited as well. I think anybody who's been through, and I'm a Scorpio, so I like the tower, right? I like destruction and change and all those things. So I understand that not everybody is like me, but you know, this whole collapse, this whole tower collapsing, like how we come out of it, I think is going to be really amazing. And you're either going to be holding on for dear life, not wanting it to collapse, or you just let go and just let it happen and let it flow. Because I think that letting go, that divine feminine energy is what's going to save you like through this time period. Because I do think the structure of the US is changing. The structure of our government is going to change. I feel like we'll see if even the presidency in the 50 states and all these things even stays the same over the next 4 years. I mean, I'm just kind of waiting and watching because my observation is it's going to change. And I don't think it's going to be bad. I think it's going to be really good. But I think change is scary, you know, and so you have to be willing to step into the change and allow it to unfold. Because just like you're saying, Kate, it's like this, you know, really everything's been leading to this. Since our nation was birthed, even leading to this time where we have to have a revolution again. And I think that goes back to Thomas Jefferson's quote. And a lot of you guys were asking what he's said to me and what George Washington said to me. And a lot of the messaging is, remember what we built, remember what we stood for, remember what our symbolism means, and remember what we put in place, because they were brought here. A lot of people argue they were ascended masters. So whatever you believe, they were brought here to complete this task and to lay the groundwork for this geographical space to mean something and to lead something. And I think that's like a whole other show, but that's all I'll say. That's long-winded. I should be quiet.
Yeah, excellent. And it is, you know, that change that you were talking about, the idea of the tower card, and what we're getting is the infrastructure changing from 200 years of Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in Earth signs. And that's what happened from 1802 to for the year 2000. There was Jupiter Saturn were meeting in Earth signs, and that, as I said, is this the structure of the world we got used to. You know, materialism, consumerism, you know, governance, but democracy. But things like Virgo was, you know, the factories and education systems. Taurus was money and banks, and you know, for 200 years it was all this was basically Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, and that was the structure of society built on Earth signs. And we've now shifted from there was a crossover phase of 40 years. Jupiter Saturn met in Libra in 1980. And then again, they've just met in Aquarius. And that's now set up another 160 years of air signs. And so that is the shift. That is the tower. You know, what we've got is the old Earth infrastructure still holding its form, but the air is now lifting up underneath it. It's literally pushing it up, you know, and the old infrastructure will fall apart. For something new to be replaced, and that will be over this really strongly over this next 20 years. So, you know.
Cool. Any parting words of wisdom? I hope you both come back and we talk more about some of this, because I think it sounds like there's a lot more to come and stuff to be prepared for and all of those things. But Kate, any parting words of wisdom for us today?
I'd say like Pluto is kind of like going to therapy. Think about going to a therapist, right? And we start bringing up all these old emotions, things we haven't discussed, things that maybe we forgot about. And that's kind of what we're going through with the US. It's before and after that we're going through. It's revealing things. It's getting below the surface, literally, and you know, psychologically. So we're getting back to the energy that we were founded under, and I'm excited about the change.
Julian?
Yeah. Well, pretty much what Kate said there as well. Now's the time to really work through our stuff. In order to have a better world, change starts with ourselves. And that's really where it's at. You can say, I want the world to be different. We've got to do something. Why is the world? Why is this? But we've got to work on ourselves. Because then that's where we can then contribute to a new world, to a new way of seeing things or being. So I think all New Age therapies, holistic things, spiritual books, everything helps. Everything helps, and find our true nature. Find the true nature. We are in the creation. I love that. I love this idea that we're in the creation. We're in the heavens right now. We're surrounded by the sky. That's quite airy. We're surrounded by sky. All of us. Right now we've got the sky all around us. We're in the heavens. And therefore, we find our divine nature, our connection to the creation or the creator, because it's going on all around us all the time, and meeting the world, because everything is mind. Everything is the mind. The fact that we're talking now is because it's mind. Everything is, and a lot of the world doesn't think like that. You see, people don't think like that. But when you do, you can guarantee to find happiness. There's a more happiness there, because you say, oh, actually, I am this eternal space. I'm this eternal consciousness, or awareness. I am eternally aware of myself. And then there's consciousness and layers upon layers outside of me. It starts with the body and then moves outwards. But there's something about, finding oneself. I think we should have an astrology spiritual one, where, because I could, without going off too off on the tangent here, but there's some really good stuff to talk about. About the seven heavens, that's things like that. I've got lots to talk about now. It's what I'm writing my book about, actually. So I'm doing my first astrology book. I've been an astrologer for 25 years, so I'm finally getting my book written. It took me quite a while, because I didn't just want to say what everyone else says. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so it took me quite a while, and it took some looking into the things like Buddhism and various other things, to understand it, to try and understand where I was at, and how to bring astrology to make it more of a healing art, or that it can transform us. And the ancients, the ancient astrology, they knew it all. They were so enlightened.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got our next show, because Eve is asking about the astrocartography of the major nations. And I think that would be very interesting to look at all of these different countries and where they're at, because I do think there's a world overview to our planet changing as she ascends and shifts and changes. So thank you guys so much for doing this today. I really appreciate both of you, and for being a part of our community too. And I want to remind everybody out there, if you have not yet downloaded the Ajatakasa app, it is available on Android and on iPhones and on your web and all of those things. And all of that information is down below. But it's ajatakasa.com. Has all of the information there. So I just want to throw that out there. It is a free community. It is a social media app. There's no algorithms, tracking, tracing, and it's all spiritual, and it's dedicated to nonviolence. So please get in there. I know Kate's in there. Julian, you got to get in there. You can follow me in there, but we can continue this discussion if you guys want to continue to talk about this. We have our Buddhist Biohacker Forum in the app, and we can continue to talk about the US and all of your questions, because there's lots of stuff coming up here in the comments I can see. And so don't forget that. And I will be back next week for Tarot Tuesdays here on my YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe here. And Kate, real quick, go through how folks can find you. And you also have a YouTube. So whatever you'd like to share.
Absolutely. You can find me on my website at thekatewin.com. It's down there in the comments. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at _KateWind. And lastly, I run a podcast with my mom. She's been an astrologer for 40 years. So we have a podcast called Mom and Me Astrology, where we talk weekly about what's been going on in the news and things about the different signs.
Awesome. And Julian, how can folks find you?
I have a website called londonastrologer.com. So find me there. I at the moment I'm doing I'm writing a thing called a weekly almanac, which you might like to sign up for. It's a free newsletter, and it's approaching horoscopes slightly differently. So it's more detailed, more astrological, and I hope you might find that interesting. I'm writing my book. I give lectures. I teach astrology. And I'm the chairman of my local group because I'm over here in England. I've crossed the pond, but I do have I have an American wife, and my daughter was born in Tennessee as well. And we're going to come back eventually, I think, one day.
I love it.
And I'm going to drive an RV around America, giving lectures at all the astrology groups.
I love it.
And I might do that before, actually. Hopefully, when my book's published, I'm going to do all the astrology. So I'll do all the astrology groups then. So you'll get to meet me then eventually. I'm planning on sort of trying to do that sometime in the next year or two. So.
Oh, that'll be so fun. I want to have a Buddhist biohacker food truck. This is my new thing. I went to culinary school, for those of you guys who don't know, and actually worked in restaurants before I ever did my psychic work. And I'm like totally going to take Buddhist biohacker on the road and make food and do readings while I'm cooking or whatever. I don't even know, but it'll be fun.
That's fun.
Excellent.
Right? That sounds so fun. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Kate and Julian, for being here. Thank you for everybody watching, and we will see you guys soon. And hopefully you guys will definitely come back because I think there's a lot more we can talk about.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Super.